Today I want to just have a general chat about council tax. But before we get on to that, I just want to let people know that if you're interested, the Freedom magazine, this I think is issue number 8, November 2024. I should have done this a couple of days ago. The very nice people at the White Rose sent it to me, and you can find out where to get it. I'll put a link in the description, but it's the White Rose people, and I'm just double checking I've got that correct. Yes, White Rose products on the White Rose website. I'll leave a link in the description. Freedom magazine, lots of exciting things, including a statement by Dr. Mike Yeadon. So go and check that out. And I'd just like to say a big thank you to those people who have been sending me books. That's very kind of you, and I'm trying to read them, and we'll do interviews and make comments and all that in due course. Anyway, this is just, I wanted to do a more relaxed sort of chat really about the council tax, because I hear that they're likely to be cracking down on it next year, and I'm not surprised, because a number of people, presumably a significant number of people, have been withholding their payments because they don't agree with it, and they've been challenging in courts and writing letters, rebutting particular statements, and so on and so forth. And I imagine that the councils are a little bit miffed by all of this. It must be very hard for them. You've got to feel sorry, I think, for the people who work in the council, in as much as they are trying to enforce something which is illegal, immoral, and unjust. And they're trying to push this to people who have a sense of morality, justice, and fairness. And because of that, people are resisting and saying, actually, why should we be paying this? Just because we always have, just because we've always been asked to have money extracted from our bank account purely for living under a roof in a house in a town, why are we paying, and who's setting that tariff, and what does it really mean? And I myself have challenged this. Now, in my instance, just to bring people up to speed if you're interested, I could see that if you say I'm not going to pay, that is going to cause controversy, and you're putting yourself against the system. However, if you say I am happy to pay, and I paid using the bill of exchange. I was interviewing a chap called Mike Holt on the show some months ago. He's been on twice, and he was talking about this, and he didn't specifically say it was a way of paying the council tax, but I thought, well, they are a government body, and using the trust fund, you could pay off certain debts. And I thought, well, there's nothing to lose by giving it a whirl. So I followed the instructions which he had. I'll put a link in the website to it, his page, in case you're interested to have a look. Anyway, I followed his method. I sent it to the council, and they came back and after a long time said, well, this wasn't satisfactory, that wasn't how they wanted to be paid, even though, from what my understanding is that it was a perfectly legitimate way of paying for certain government things. So I said, no problem, send me back the financial instrument. My signature on their bill turned the bill into a financial instrument, which one or two things could happen. I'll get onto that in a minute. So I said, send it back. And they just would not entertain the idea of sending it back. They made no reference to it. And I said, well, I've sent it in, and I had sent it by registered post. I said, just send it back and I'll pay you another way. And they wouldn't send it back. So I just kept saying, look, at no point have I not said I won't pay you. At no point have I said I won't pay you. I have paid you, I've settled the account. But if that's not acceptable, send it back and I'll do it another way. And they kept refusing to do that. Eventually, like all these things, you get that point where you get the final demand. And I wrote the 3-letter process and simply said, look, you can rebut that it has been settled, and if I don't hear from you in so many days, you will have tacitly agreed. I didn't hear from them, so I then said, you have obviously agreed that I have paid this. It is now that in effect becomes its own court, because you have all the documents, you've written to them, you've got proof of postage, they haven't replied, you've sent them a final default notice saying, well, as you haven't replied within this time, you obviously have agreed that you've paid. So that was my stance. Next thing I get is a summons. Excuse me a minute whilst I have a slurp of my Earl Grey tea. So the summons came, and the summons, as I've understood this going down this journey for the last 2 years, is an invitation. You know, they're summoning the dead. The legal fiction is the dead. So I wrote back and said, thank you for your invitation, but I'll settle out of court. Now, I understand, and don't take any of this as legal advice in any shape or form, but I understand that when you get a summons, you can settle out of court. It's just, again, you don't understand, or you don't think that that's the process. You think, oh, I must do this, I must do that. So I said, no, I'll settle out of court. I'm happy to pay, and please give me my financial instrument back. So the way I look at this is, they sent me a bill, I sent them a gold bar. They said, we don't accept gold bars. I said, no problem, send me the gold bar back, I'll pay you another way. They didn't send me the gold bar back. So I said, well, I'm not going to pay you again until you send me the gold bar back. And they still wouldn't send me the gold bar back. That's the financial instrument, effectively. So in the end, because of that, I said, right, well, I'm going to send you an invoice. So I sent them an invoice for the same amount of money that they'd asked me, which is what I'd put on my financial instrument. Effectively, that's me saying, you haven't given me my gold bar back, so therefore I'm giving you an invoice for the value of the gold bar, if you see what I mean. And it's all gone quiet. So I'm waiting now, you know, at some point, that the date of the court summons came. But let's just talk about that. We know it's a fake court. We know it's a hired court. We know that the council will rubber stamp thousands of non-payment council taxes in one day. People have sent me, many people over the last 2 years, copies of the summons that they get. And all of them have pretty much variations of the same thing. You don't have to appear, or if you do want to appear, talk to the council first. At what point in any legal case, what you are sent a summons from the court, allegedly, from the court, would you be then going to the claimant to get permission to go to the court? So if I was accused of murder and the person who was bringing the court case, let's say it was the parents of somebody who'd been murdered, and they were saying it was me, I would have to go to the parents to be able to say, can I come to court to defend myself? That's effectively the position the council are taking. They're the claimant, you're the defendant. You have to have your time in court to be able to defend. You may have reasons why you cannot pay it, and you don't want to negotiate with the council. You want this on the public record. They don't want it on the public record. It's not recorded. It's a fake court. It's all baloney. So why would you want to go and enter their den and accept their terms? It all comes down to jurisdiction. So one of the things that many other legal pundits will say is, but the Financial Act 1992 says that you have to pay it. It was a legitimate government who was voted in by the people have said that this is the legislation, that people will pay the poll tax. As you had voted in that particular government that agreed that in whenever it was, 1993 or whenever it was, that's the government who've made the decision. You voted for the government and therefore you have to stick for it. Now, how do you know that I voted at any one time? You don't know that, for one thing. And things have changed. People have changed, people have come and gone, governments have come and gone. The legislation is only some rules written by somebody else, nothing to do with me. I wasn't there. I was unable to negotiate with it. There's no contract between me and them. The council, as we know, are businesses. They're registered on Dun & Bradstreet, which my council, I continually, in all my correspondence, let them know I know that. Thank you very much. I let them know that they're a business, not a public authority. So they have no authority to start talking about legislation because they are a business. They are no more connected with legislation than Woolworths was. Woolworths is no longer defunct, but it's no longer here, by the way. But anyway, so they don't have that authority. They are in a rock and a hard place. The advantage they have, of course, is because they're all damn well corrupt. The courts are corrupt by allowing them to hire a court, by issuing fake liability orders, which have no power whatsoever. And then they have the police and the bailiffs working in conjunction together to turn up to intimidate you to pay, because they've got something which is totally illegal and you shouldn't have to pay whatsoever. Now, I have no qualms about paying to have my bins taken away. In fact, you know, I would think it was unfair that we get to this point where we are not paying the council tax, because the people who work and do the good work of, you know, there's people who will mow the lawns in the parks, people who are picking up the litter in the streets, the bin men who are taking the bins away in the mornings. These people have obviously got to be paid and remunerated for their time to go to work and do what they do. So rather than just say, well, I'm not going to pay and I think it's outrageous, which it is, of course, I would rather go to the council next year in March when they start touting their council tax and say to them, look, I am happy to make a contribution to my community. That's not the issue. You've set a tariff, which I don't necessarily agree how much you're paying your CEO, because they are a CEO, because they're a business. I'm not happy with the tariffs that you're paying your staff and this, that and the other and what have you. But what I will pay for is a whole load of things. It may be a bit of street lighting. It may be a little bit of road maintenance. It may be the bins. I'm happy for the parks to be done. I'm happy for I live on the seafront, so that to be cleared and the seaweed to be, you know. There are many different things that the council will be responsible for and are doing. But I don't mind chipping in, let's say, to that. But as they don't come with an itemised, this costs us this much and we would like to have a contribution from you of this much, then in the end, I think I should just make them an offer of what I'm going to pay. And it might be something like, I don't know, £50 a month, £50 a month for all their services. So what's that, 300 quid a year, something like that? I think that's a fair amount of money. They should be able to do that. And if everybody in my town, I don't know how many people are in this, about 200,000 people, I think, where I live, spread out in the sprawl of urban this, that and the other, if all of those pay £300, well, what's that? That's several million, isn't it? So they could probably manage to do that quite well. They could reduce the size of the council. That would be another thing. They could stop paying exorbitant fees for these people who are effectively just administrators doing things. And if they won't accept that, then why not have a different council? And I've said this before in another video. The trouble with the council is that A, they're a business, and the Monopolies Commission says you can't have a monopoly in any one place, in one business. You should be able to have several businesses so you get competition. So clearly we need other businesses who are set up as councils because they're not a public authority. So then set up another business in competition and say, well, look, if you pay your money to us, we'll clear the beans, we'll clear the bins, we'll sort out the parks, we'll clean up the seafront and get rid of all the seaweed and various other things that wash in. We'll sort out the roads and this, that and the other, and act as competition. And I think that that would be a viable business, and people could go and say, well, actually, you're cheaper than this business called the council. We'll pay our money to you. The councils are illegitimate, they're fraudulent, they're corrupt, and they're too expensive. And they're pushing down to you and I harassment and fraudulent activities which should not be hassling. I mean, and let's face it, if the councils were really there to work for us and help us, and we had voted them in, and the people were actually there for our benefit, don't you think that instead of continually putting in things like 5G towers, surveillance everywhere, 20-mile-an-hour zones, 15-minute cities, instead of saying, no, you can't put that up, no, you can't do that, oh, look, your dog's fouled the pavement and you're only walking 200 yards down the road and you haven't got a bag, I'm going to fine you on the thing. No, you can't park there. Oh, you're 2 minutes over where you've parked. We're going to send you a parking ticket and collect money. If the councils were really on your side, don't you think they'd be trying to say, look, let's help you. Let's help you. You seem to be somebody who's perhaps disabled or unable to go out very easily, or you've got a problem with your neighbour. Let's help you. But instead of that, the councils just seem to be hell-bent on collecting revenue, left, right and centre, because they're businesses with a bottom line and that's their job, to make a profit. They're not interested in you and I. If they were, they would be there as kind, benevolent people who are there saying, how can I help you live a better life? They don't seem to do that. The government doesn't seem to do that. The police do not seem to do that. The judicial system does not seem to be that. These public bodies that are supposed to be there for our benefit have turned 180. They've turned themselves into businesses. They've turned themselves into trying to fleece us left, right and centre. And it's about time we, the people who put them there and pay for them, woke up and said, no, thank you. This is not right.